America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, April 22nd, 2020. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps and steps and steps and steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal, the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, pre-taped interview with Diane Ravitch on her book, Slaying Goliath, about the death of the corporate so-called school reform movement. But before we get to that, Senate passes new corona stimulus bill, House expected to follow. And as of about a minute ago, I was going to tell you that the House queues up a vote to allow lawmakers to vote in absentia for the first time in hundreds of years, opening up and democratizing this whole response to coronavirus. But Nancy Pelosi has shut it down. And that will not be happening. Meanwhile, the Department of Justice says it will now support legal action versus governors who maintain stay-at-home orders. And the Southern governors form a homicide-suicide pact to open up their states. CDC warns that the second wave of COVID likely in terms of its impact on hospitals. And the director of BARDA, a key agency in terms of vaccine development, leaves his post suddenly because why would we have anyone? This and more on today's program, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Sorry, we had a little bit of a technical problem up top. Lost our internet connection on Matt's end. Gonna pull down that music, or yeah, okay. Apparently the problem is that doing the show at noontime is probably peak usage for the internet over the course of the day. I would imagine, at least in terms of uploading, is my guess. That's got to be it, right? From a downloading perspective, you would expect it that at nights would be it.
We did about 5 hours last night, and absolutely no problems. And today it's just not good for Optimum, folks.
Well, and I got to say, not good for Optimum, but it's also not good for my my mental state, because I was at least happy about that. I mean, we did part of the we actually did the headlines, or halfway through the headlines, and then the internet crashed. And I had gotten past the House queuing up the vote to allow lawmakers to vote in abstention. This is the first time it would have happened in about 230 some odd years. And it's a big deal, because we would start to get a sense of just like forcing lawmakers to engage in the process of these stimulus and bailout bills. And there's going to be more. There's going to be more, despite the fact that McConnell is now squawking about it. But allowing people to participate would mean that there would actually have to be some responsiveness and democracy involved in this process, that Nancy Pelosi couldn't just get, and Chuck Schumer couldn't just unilaterally decide, look, this is what we're going to do because our strategy is to duck and to hide and to do nothing and hope that Donald Trump is so odious that people will vote for us in the fall. If we don't do anything, we cannot be subject to criticism. or to the extent that we can be, it is far more difficult to criticize us for doing nothing than doing something. That's their strategy. And also apparently to go on to television and project that they're doing about as well as one could imagine in this situation relative to the rest of the American public. That they've got a great effing kitchen and they've got a stock, they've got, they're not even like, they're, you hear that thing about first world problems. Nancy Pelosi wants to apparently go on television and project that like she doesn't even have first world problems. She has like space station problems. Like not even like so transcendent that it's not even like, or not, it's going to be like we all of our and so that's their strategy. And apparently now, this is according to Alex Moe from ABC News, from NBC News, excuse me. The House will no longer consider remote voting by proxy this week, per a Democratic leadership source. Pelosi announced on a leadership call that after a conversation with McCarthy, they are tasking a bipartisan to review voting by proxy and reopening the House. In other words, we're going to shove this into a committee to stall it. Why are we doing this? Because McCarthy and I have decided that we're on the same page with this. They're going to get to do stuff, and we're going to pretend like everything's fine. And we don't want any meddling from the representatives of the people. I mean, this is just effing outrageous. And meantime, they're just getting rolled and rolled and rolled. Chuck Schumer announced after signing off on this latest sort of stopgap coronavirus stimulus bill that we're going to get all our good stuff in phase 4. And about 30 seconds after he announces that, Mitch McConnell's like, well, you know what? I think we're only going to do voting in town, and we got to start worrying about the deficit and the debt. I mean, this is getting a little bit out of control now. My mood has significantly worsened in the past 3 minutes. So sorry about that, folks. Michael is joining us today via Zoom. Hello. Michael.
Well, I was going to say, how are you doing? But I know how you're doing, but it's nice to be talking with you. I saw this clip I've been mentioning, Parag Khanna, who's this policy guy who focuses on Asia. And it just drives me crazy with the Democratic Party, because he made a very good point, and it wasn't a radical point. And they were asking him about the authoritarian responses to this crisis versus democratic ones, and Asia and Europe. And he said, look, yes, of course, this is important to ask those questions. But let's be honest here. The highest performing countries are basically, relatively speaking, high functioning democracies with great social safety nets. Like, yes, what Orban is doing is terrible. He's also not containing corona particularly well. Germany is. In Asia, South Korea, best performer. Taiwan, doing a really good job. So there is some elements here where it isn't that radical and it isn't counterintuitive or unexpected. It's just like, you have a decent democratic process and accountability. You have national health care. Cool. You will be, relatively speaking, better positioned to deal with this. And, you look at the Democrats, and I always stipulate that I set aside my particular brand of politics to say, where is a bare minimum center-left response here? And, I don't know. I mean, bragging about getting extra hospital funding during a pandemic. Okay. Sure.
Well,
I mean,
there's another dynamic that's happening here, and
Yeah.
I want to get into it in a bit. I don't want to jump the gun on that. I mean, but the hospital funding, of course, yes. I mean, that's low hanging fruit. The thing they didn't get was the cities and states. And
no, that's what I'm saying is that they're claiming victory for low hanging fruit and not fighting. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is even that guy Michael Grunwald, who from Time Magazine, who
wrote the Obama stimulus is the best thing ever book.
Yes, and even he is like, all they're doing is getting stuff that the Republicans want. It's literally like, okay, your neighbor comes back from the supermarket. This is pre-corona, and they're carrying 3 bags, and they're like, carry one of my bags for me. I've got 2. And you say yes, and you carry it up the stairs, and then you think that you've gone grocery shopping, even though you leave it all in their apartment. Exactly. But we'll get to that, because I think there's a dynamic that's going on in the States that I think is starting to, we'll have a time where we can orderly sort this out.
You don't want UN inspections of chemical weapons programs if they do that?
Well, eventually we would. I mean, what are they doing in terms of
now?
All right. Okay, folks, look, here's the deal before we go any further. The internet is causing us some real problems out of Matt's apartment. And so we are spotty on all our video situations. If we go under, if our stream crashes, we're just going to go on with the show and record it, and we will post it. But what we will also do, Matt, maybe you can do this, is just stream it to audio, so that if you get the app at majorityapp.com, or you go to our website, and the app is free.
We'll try
just
to
stream.
This
we'll
goes
stream
through
it
Vimeo.
audio.
It goes through Vimeo too, but we'll try to stream through audio as well.
Do you not have the Nicecast there locally?
Oh no.
That goes through Vimeo.
Yeah, it does now, but we'll set that up.
Okay.
We'll try to just the audio. See if maybe you can just send the audio to Vimeo. Okay. I don't know.
Okay. But we'll post the full show if we drop right afterwards.
Are we dropped right this second?
No, we're back.
No,
we're
not.
back.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to tell people.
Just
if we
giving
dropped
people
this second, it wouldn't help. So go pick up the app at majorityapp.com. You can also watch the show on video live on that app as well. You can get YouTube through the app. So it's worth having in these situations. I should tell you right now that if I'm a little bit out of sorts, it's because my stash of Liquid IV matcha is out, and I'm waiting for more. For the first couple of weeks through this thing, that was basically what that's basically what I was living on. I was hitting it pretty hard. Half of Americans report they fight with daily fatigue. Right now, I feel like it's 100% of Americans.
Yes.
I keep seeing there's a meme that goes around where it's like, people are handing like coffee and bourbon, and it's like they're like a baton handing off from each other all day, every day.
A relay race.
But for me, I got to tell you, the energy multiplier, it has been giving me sustained energy throughout the day. It's a great all-natural alternative to processed energy drinks. The premium matcha and green energy blend, it tastes delicious. It provides a lasting energy boost. Like I say, throughout the day, it's like a couple cups of coffee without the crash. Liquid IV's energy multiplier contains a mixture of teas and herbs that are high in antioxidants. They help improve mood and focus. Maybe that's why I'm in such a pissy mood today, because I've run out of it. They have without any artificial flavors or preservatives. The cellular transport technology delivers enhanced rapid absorption into the bloodstream that gives you a boost fast. It's non-GMO, it's vegan, it's free of gluten, it's free of dairy, it is free of soy. I love this stuff, honestly. It tastes great. It gives me a great energy boost. I feel better. I feel like I'm doing something healthy for myself, as opposed to just, sucking in other means of whatever, energy drinks or coffee or whatnot. I love it. And I'm waiting for more Liquid IV if you're listening to me. You can get 25% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use the code MajorityRep at checkout. That's 25% off anything you order on Liquid IV's website. Just go to liquidiv.com, enter the promo code MajorityRep. You save 25%. You get better hydration. You get better energy. It's better tasting. Believe me, this matcha stuff, it's awesome. It comes in a little packet. You can travel with it easy if you want to. You can store it. It's shelf stable. Don't wait. Start fueling your adventures today. Even if it's basically just staying awake as your kids drive you crazy. The other thing that now this is also become a staple of mine. This episode's brought to you by Magic Spoon. It's a breakfast cereal. And I know many of us, we liked breakfast as a kid. We don't eat it as an adult. Too sugary, right? It's an easy setup. I give breakfast cereal. Very difficult to get them to eat a breakfast cereal that isn't like just pounded with sugar. Magic Spoon is a new cereal company that's discovered a way to recreate your favorite childhood cereals. These are the ones that you enjoyed when they were like, the Cocoa Puffs, the Frosted Flakes. Well, Magic Spoon has created this new cereal. It has 0 sugar, 12 grams of protein, 3 net grams of carbs in each serving. It offers 4 flavors based on the all-time classics: cocoa, fruity, frosted, and blueberry. These are all like the...
What's your favorite, Sam?
Cocoa.
Cocoa.
Yeah. I don't even have to think about it.
Not even a question.
Not even a question. Plus, they got a variety pack that lets you have them all. They've recreated the taste and the texture of classic sugary cereals, but it tastes so incredible. You'd never guessed it was healthy. It's keto-friendly. It is gluten-free. It is grain-free. It is soy-free. It is low-carb. And it is GMO-free. And guess, not only, the best part is that I've got now, Saul thinks that I am eating his cereal, and he doesn't realize that he's eating my cereal.
Boom.
It's like, all right, I'll do it. It's not, I generally don't like these type of cereals, Saul. These are really more for kids.
Wow.
And now we're both eating it. I'm psyched because I'm enjoying it.
You're jiu-jitsuing
and I'm
a little
psyched
bit.
because he's not, I'm not pouring a bucket of sugar in his mouth in the morning. Go to magicspoon.com/Majority Report. Grab a variety pack. Try it today. Use the promo code Majority Report at checkout to get free shipping. Magic Spoon is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund your money. No questions asked. That's magicspoon.com/Majority Report. Code Majority Report for free shipping.
I would just like to shout out really quickly at Eric _time on Twitter, who says, your restraint not doing the Saul Rosenberg voice during the Liquid IV read is admirable, at Michael Brooks. It is, and thank you.
I will say, just honestly, talking about those two things has already brightened my mood.
I know.
Let's go into this hydroxychloroquine thing, and then we'll talk more about the stimulus. And I want to talk about, obviously, the shutdowns that's happening with all the states. But this hydroxychloroquine thing is, this is just another one of those stories that 6 months from now, a year from now, there's going to be some long-form magazine piece that is just going to be like, we should arrest every single one of those people if they haven't been arrested by that point again. There was a VA study that showed queen can be fatal. They have stopped giving it to people at the VA. We knew this was the case in Brazil. We knew this was the case in France. We were waiting for a legitimate test, and we still are. And here's Donald Trump, who was pushing this thing like it was like the Trump hotels for weeks. And here he is, asked a question by John Carl at the White House press show yesterday. And here's Trump. He's in charge. I mean, this is the thing that was going to save us all. Play this clip.
I'm wondering if you're concerned. This VA study showed that actually more people died that used the drug that didn't. And I'm wondering if Governor Cuomo brought you back any results.
We didn't discuss it, and I don't know of the report. Obviously, there have been some very good reports, and perhaps this one's not a good report, but we'll be looking at it. We'll have a comment on it.
A panel of experts at the NIH is actually now recommending against the use of hydroxychloroquine in combination with Z-Pak, which is something you've been recommending.
I'm always willing to take a look. Fred?
Another subject you were...
So this thing that he's been pushing for weeks, he apparently is just not aware of the reports from the NIH and the VA. I know that we're all at this point supposed to just accept the fact that the guy lies through his effing teeth and that it's not a big deal. But are you effing kidding me? Like, at what point do we just stop? You know, at what point does anybody stand up and just say, like, you got to be kidding me? You got to be kidding me. It's insane. He doesn't pay attention to any of the report. I hadn't heard about the report where the people were dying. I hadn't heard about the National Institute of Health that had made a report. No, I didn't know. No. I was just checking the stocks on Novartis or whatever it is that was producing this shit.
I was familiar with the Novartis price, not the clinical trials. I mean,
I don't know if it was Novartis. I'm just throwing out a...
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, we don't know if it's Novartis. But I think, yeah, I think it's important to... I remember in the beginning of the Trump administration, I think there was a lot of mistakes, like even just the idea of like, don't normalize him. I mean, I'm sorry, he's the president. You know, I don't even know what that even means. Right. And there was a huge amount of, you know, I think being upset about his every move and utterance, just not effective. But I frankly think that, yeah, we need to somehow rediscover. You can't always go for it. You can't always be upset. You can't always obsess about him, but you can't just completely say, that's just the guy on TV every day who tells people to take dangerous drugs. That's just the dude who lies about the pandemic. That's just the guy who, like, you know, I mean, we'll get to it later, sends immigrants back or people seeking asylum back. That's just what he does. He's just a bullshit artist. I mean, honestly, I think part of it is, you know, again, I don't think melodrama and constantly feeding him energy is effective, but I do think there has to be a medium of reminding everybody that, like, yes, the fact that he is a constant liar and essentially the whole administration could be explained through narcissism and petty corruption with some random, very smart political instincts that never even turn into reality with regards to the economic populist stuff. And it's a problem. So, you know.
And I'll tell you something. And I think part of the reason, and people are going to say this is a big leap, but I'm sorry. We must maintain these norms and expectations, because when Nancy Pelosi, for instance, and I don't mean to turn it there, but I'm saying it could be for the next president. It could be for any type of agency. But when we say it's okay and it's like to be expected that the president of the United States is going to push a drug for weeks as the miracle cure for this, and then multiple agencies in the government say it's killing people, and everybody's like, well, he got faced, pawned, on to the next thing on Twitter, whatever it is. When that doesn't resonate with people, responding to the fact that, like, Pelosi cut off the opportunity for Democratic lawmakers, or any lawmakers for that matter, to start voting on these massive bills that are going to fundamentally alter the way that our economy works. Like, we should respond to that too. And part of not responding to when Donald Trump does that, it's not so much that you're normalizing Donald Trump. It's you're normalizing the behavior, and that behavior can be taken up and performed by other politicians in the future and in the moment.
Well, that's
why it's so important not to normalize. It's not normalizing him; it's normalizing the behavior.
Right. No, that's a great point. And, you know, David Sirota actually made a really important point with regards to this. And again, before people get, you know, triggered with he's not drawing a direct analogy, and he certainly supports voting against Trump, but he said, you know, the ways in which Joe Biden lied about his record with regards to Social Security, with regards to Medicare for all, that last debate with Sanders, where he didn't say, my position has changed, or that was in the context or whatever. He just lied. And, and Sirota rightly said that this is, I think it's a decades-long project, actually, frankly, of spin and manipulation of public opinion, which we also need to deal with too. But it's very much also the new parameters that Trump and the total failure of the media have set.
Absolutely.
That's exactly what you're saying.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. Because when people, any criticism lodged against, or any of the candidates for that matter, but relative to Trump, but that's not supposed to be the standard.
Yeah, and that big lies are back.
This dumpster fire is not supposed to be the standard in which we measure against our own politicians. And when we talk about not normalizing, that's the part that's the problem with the normalizing. It's not that he gets normalized. It's that the behavior gets normalized and we allow others to operate in that way.
Right.
Because it diminishes our expectations out of our leaders and our elected officials or our TV networks. Let me just give you a breakdown about what Fox News between March 23rd and April 6th, Fox hosts and guests praised hydroxychloroquine almost 300 times. That's over the course of 2 weeks, 300 times. 15 days, that's 20 times a day, including the weekends. 20 times a day, multiple times an hour. Hydroxychloroquine. Since April 15th, hydroxychloroquine has been mentioned on Fox News and its sister network, Fox Business, a total of 51 times. The week before that, the drug was mentioned 138 times. During the first week of April, it was 194 times. You get a sense of what's going on here. As soon as they start to maybe get a slight whiff that this thing isn't the miracle cure. Here is Fox and Friends talking to Dr. Oz now that it's clear that it's been killing people.
Dr. Oz.
Well, here we go.
Dr. Oz, another very admirable performer during all of this.
All right. Do we not have that video?
I have that video at my internet. It's something with Twitter. Just give me
That's coming. I wish we could cut a Liquid IV ad right now where Sam's getting upset about the video loading and then he shoots some matcha and goes, "It's all right. It'll reload."
We may need to come up with a slightly different way of doing this.
Yeah. I'm on the same internet as
everybody.
All right.
All right. Just give me 2 seconds.
Let's blow it off. Let's talk about the stimulus.
Yeah.
We got to do the show. What is in the new stimulus bill? This is sort of what they're calling an addendum to phase 3. This is basically to shore up the Paycheck Protection Program. That was the program that basically went out about 2 weeks ago and 3 weeks ago now, I guess. It's created in March. It was initially $350 billion. And it ran out almost immediately. Many people did not get any support. It's basically to provide for small businesses a grant. If 75% of the money that you get goes towards paying payroll for people, it becomes a grant up to 10 weeks worth of payroll. Another 25% of that loan, if 75% of it goes to payroll, could be used for things like rent and overhead and whatnot. And I guess presumably also paying the the business owner, I guess, or some type of if they're not on payroll for some reason. That ran out very quickly. We found out subsequent to it that a lot of huge multi-million-dollar companies were able to sort of structure themselves in a way that they looked like small business. Mm-hmm. And in this instance, the Republicans tried to get a $250 billion one passed with nothing else, and the Democrats shut it down. In this instance, the bill is now $484 billion. $350 billion of that, more or less, goes to the Paycheck Protection Program, about $380. $75 billion of it goes to hospitals. $25 billion goes for disease testing. That's the part that the Democrats are really bragging about, the $75 billion to hospitals. That's good, but and maybe Republicans wouldn't have pushed it at all. They certainly weren't going to do it 2 weeks ago anyways, but maybe they would have by now. It's unclear because we don't even know where this money ends up going. That's part of the problem.
Right.
And but the legislation passed in the Senate. It will probably pass in the House because there's no voting. It's just basically unanimous consent. There will be some testing money that will go there. Some of it will go to the states. Some of it will go to the federal government. Apparently, Donald Trump doesn't want responsibility for federal testing and wants to be able to say that Congress didn't earmark any money. So that's probably why they put that in there. Democrats wanted money, $150 billion for states and local governments, but McConnell and Mnuchin wouldn't do it. Schumer said he was sorely disappointed that new food aid and money requested by governors was not included in the package. Here's the game that's being played. Well, first off, at one point they should leverage some stuff and say, guess what? If you're not going to give money to feed people and you're not going to give money to states to help people who are unemployed, we're not going to give money to businesses. And you're going to have to deal with the consequences. I mean, if you're going to play this game, I mean, this is the thing that doesn't match up for me. And Michael, I want your comment on this. If the game is Joe Biden's going to pretend like he doesn't exist, the Democrats are going to pretend like they don't exist, because when your enemy is, hurting himself or whatever that line is, don't get in the way of your enemy, killing themselves. Okay. I personally disagree with that strategy, but that's a strategy. It exists. It has some internal coherence to it. Well, what is the strategy where if the theory is they're going to hurt themselves and we're going to win in the fall, and it's a very narrow strategy, right? It's not about legislation. It's not about helping the country. It's not about setting things up for the future. None of that. Okay, fine. It's just about winning the election, because if we don't win the election, we can't do anything else, blah, blah, blah. If that's the strategy, well, then why do anything at all? Why not use that as leverage? If you're going to go along, the point is, if you're going to, why not do the $250 billion 2 weeks ago? Why are you doing half measures? You're neither fish nor fowl. You either use the leverage or you don't. If you use it a little bit to do nothing, then you're involved in their screw-ups.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense.
That's the point.
It's not internally coherent strategy.
And also, I mean, I'll forgive me, but I'll quote James Carville, who said, and this is and along the lines of that strategy, but more coherent. He said, when your opponent's drowning, throw them an anvil. So you could maybe, yes, you don't want to get in the way of their screw-ups, but you can actually aid them when they're already unraveling by making their lives harder. I mean, I just, a couple of points on this. One, what's incredible too, and it does really reflect the asymmetry of power, is that the Democrats are not even, they're not going in a mat for basic, food aid, more state aid. The progressive wing is completely shut out of this. I mean, we know that Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib have put forward very important. I mean, there's nothing utopian about giving people $2,000 a month and making sure they don't have to pay rent during a situation like this. That isn't even on the table. And I think that that's important to note. But I wonder, when this is written about, I made the point last week that Bill Clinton used to get criticized because he was so obsessed with polls that he would even poll where to go on vacation. And that was a symptom of how, plastic his administration was. And I said, you know what? Where is that same pollster to tell Nancy Pelosi to not appear in front of a stainless steel fridge with gourmet ice creams? About the strategic incoherence of this, there has to be an element that they just are not all on the same page. They must be thinking in terms of dozens of different individual races and thinking, okay, nationally we'll run on some sort of incompetence campaign, but on specific races, we want to be able to say that, this person got 20 million for this particular project or whatever else. The best I could tell from trying to figure out what the hell it is that they're thinking is that they're somehow trying to mash up national incompetence campaign, which is what they love to run against, and then to try to pass enough legislation where individual House members and individual senators can run specific races where they talk about the individual goodies that they got into bills. That's honestly I'm just trying to think because I honestly cannot piece this together.
It's just
I can't piece it together.
Pelosi, and it is just the leadership now because nobody has any input to it. I mean, there's just no input into it.
Right.
That's why they have kept the voting off. You can't even register a complaint about it. And here's the thing that's happening. Brian Kemp, these other southern states, the reason why they are forcing people to go back to work in certain situations, like the idea, no one with half a effing brain thinks that it's possible to maintain social distancing when you're giving someone a tattoo, or when you're giving someone a haircut, or when you're giving somebody a nail, a pedicure or a manicure. That's not physically possible to maintain 6 feet and do that. This is Brian Kemp and the Republicans in these red states saying, we don't want to pay unemployment insurance.
Right.
And one of the things we've been saying over and over and over again is that every time these right wingers talk about unemployment insurance, they keep getting it wrong. Because if you don't have a job, because your boss has shut down the business, you've been laid off, that's when you collect unemployment. If you've been fired, that's when you collect unemployment. But if you don't work by your own choice, you can't collect unemployment. So if your boss opens up their whatever it is, their salon, and he doesn't want or she doesn't want their full staff to come back because they don't have enough people. And surely a certain percentage of people are going to be like, you know what? I don't want to get this disease from either my coworkers or the people coming in. So I'm not coming in. And the boss is like, well, I got news for you. We're open. You're supposed to come in. So when the unemployment office calls me and says, did you fire him? My answer is no.
Right.
And this is a backdoor way of them throwing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe, of people off the unemployment rolls so that the states don't have to pay for it.
Yes.
I mean, in Florida, we have 1.5 million people unemployed, and they have basically put, 40,000 people on the rolls.
Yep.
That's why DeSantis wants this.
Yep.
Same thing in Georgia. They got 1 million people unemployed, and they're putting like some infinitesimally small amount on the roll. They want to eliminate the designation of people being unemployed. And the way they're doing it is saying, come back into your dangerous work situation. And they know that people are going to be like, I'm not. And we also have a situation where OSHA has been completely shut down essentially by the Trump administration. So OSHA can't step in and say, hey, this is an unsafe working situation.
Right.
He can't socially distance himself if they're working on someone's fingernails or their hair, or they're giving them a tattoo.
Right.
And
no, it's ridiculous. And I mean,
it's absurd.
I think it's absurd. And I think even the point I was making earlier about how the Democrats are potentially trying to game out how they would do this in a general election is not even, it doesn't even require, it's as simple as an ad that says, Congressman Schmo was instrumental in getting $100 million extra to hospitals. But and the Republicans let this crisis happen. I honestly think it's as simple as that. And even, with the unemployment insurance, you're 100% right. And there's no strategy for that, right? Like, we can fight for extra funds for it in Congress, but then these governors will team up with, various, like the DeVos, operation in Michigan, and undermine it. And I don't see an answer. It seems to me. I mean, what? I was going to draw the comparison in 2006, but even in 2006, as much as it was run by Rahm Emanuel and it was, right-leaning and garbage, they actually did have a coherent message because they ran on anti-corruption. They don't even have that this time.
Yeah. There's a complete absence of it. All right. Do we have that video of the Dr. Oz?
Yes.
All right, let's play that, and then we'll stitch that together later. Okay, Matt? All right, here's that video of Dr. Oz. This is after, remember, they have been pounding the hell out of America about the hydroxychloroquine.
All right, so let's move on to hydroxychloroquine. They did a study, a limited study at a VA hospital, and they came to the conclusion it did no benefit, and they still had 19 deaths. What's your reaction to that, since we've all been doing heavy work to find out if this works or not?
Pause it. Pause it. They've all been doing heavy work. What kind of heavy work is Brian Kilmeade doing?
Repeating what Donald Trump said.
Yeah, we've been doing heavy work on this.
Like, Brian Kilmeade's next book is about, it's called The Hunt for the Cure. He's got a ghostwriter to team up.
It's like honestly, like how effing deluded. Like, he almost said, like, we've been doing heavy work trying to promote this for the president, and now it turns out it's killing people. Where are you on this? And can I also let's take this from the top. And can I remind everybody that we all did heavy work, right? So we're all culpable, right? Just want to get that out there.
We've all been involved in people dosing themselves in Peoria, right?
Right.
Anyways, I'm not just an Islamic Middle Ages scholar. Right. I'm also a medical anthropologist.
We've all been doing it. So it's not like, and some of us may have deeper pockets than others. So just want to get that out there. And if there's any police who are looking for me where I live, just know that we're all culpable. Go ahead.
All right, so let's move on to hydroxychloroquine. They did a study, a limited study at a VA hospital, and they came to the conclusion it did no benefit, and they still had 19 deaths. What's your reaction to that, since we've all been doing heavy work to find out if this works or not?
Well, the VA study looked at older and quite a bit sicker patients, all male patients in their hospitals, and they showed that the drug by itself didn't help and might harm that population. As you know, there have been other studies. The VA study was retrospective. They looked back to see what had happened because they weren't gathering the data at the time that they were actually giving the medications. Studies that have done this prospectively, so looking forward and giving it as collecting data as they're going along, like in France, or the randomized trials from China have shown benefits, but only really when it's given earlier to patients. The fact of the matter is, we don't know. Thankfully, these medications are prescription only, so doctors are desperately awaiting the completion of the higher quality randomized trials. And you've covered them on the show several times. South Dakota, University of Minnesota now has over 1,000 patients randomized. There's additional trials going on. Let's get that data so we know what we're dealing with.
And just to follow up real quick
also,
on
let's go ahead and get
isn't it important to know what they're combining it with and the dosage? Because it's not supposed to be taken on its own. Don't you have the Z-Pack?
Yeah.
There's a lot of variables, Brian. I got to say, I think at this point there's so much data coming from so many places. We are better off waiting for the randomized trials Dr. Fauci has been asking for. Otherwise, we keep reacting back and forth for studies that show opposite results. And a lot of it might have to do with when you get the medication. If you give it to people who are already having breathing tubes down their throat, it's not going to have the same kind of effect as if you give it early. But we don't have randomized data from the United States to educate us well enough right now.
Right. The key is trying to figure out how it all works and what we can do and what going forward works the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In other words,
exactly. So keep dosing yourself.
Maybe we shouldn't have been hyping it with absolutely no basis for weeks and weeks and weeks.
I love that, though, because that is actually, in a vacuum, sounds to me like a very reasonable conversation. That is the most pernicious spin.
Right.
When you say there's conflicting scientific evidence, luckily, this is prescription based.
Right.
We'll see how this plays out. There's studies being done across the world. We don't know yet. Versus, hey, everybody, there's a miracle.
This is the conversation that should have happened 3 weeks ago.
It would have been no problem.
Exactly. And it should have happened 2 or 3 times over the past 4 or 5 weeks. And that would have been, we're still waiting tests. Interesting side note. Good thing we haven't been pushing this without any data whatsoever.
Oh my God. Good thing we didn't tell some idiots in our audience. And you know what? I don't even want to say idiots. I'm not, this is one, I will not blame the people who dosed themselves. They're desperate, and people who they trusted told them it could save their lives.
So about 4 or 5 weeks ago, there was a story about the way Fox News was reporting on the coronavirus. Put up my tweet. I responded to this tweet. This is about 4 or 5 weeks ago, right? Let's take a look at this. Brendan?
Second, sorry.
Just 1 sec. It's a cold.
Yeah, here it is. How right-wing pundits are covering coronavirus. This is in the New York Times. Following President Trump's lead, many commentators have played down fears. And this was, I guess it was March 11th. So a little more than maybe 6 weeks ago. In 6 months, someone will create a graphic showing clusters of coronavirus deaths and how they correlate with high Fox News viewership. Okay, I apologize. I was wrong because someone came up with this in just a month and 10 days or so. There's a study that is now out. It has not been peer-reviewed. It's from economists Leonardo Bernstein, Ash Rao, Christopher Roth, David Yanagzawa Drott, and it focused on Fox News programming in February and early March. Using both a poll of Fox News viewers over age 55 and publicly available data on television watching patterns, they calculate that Fox viewers who watched Hannity rather than Tucker Carlson,
right?
So they're both on Fox, it's really controlling for stuff, we're less likely to adhere to social distancing rules, and that areas where more people watched Hannity relative to Carlson. I mean, think about this. This is just a disparity within Fox News viewers versus Fox News viewers versus the rest of the population.
Right.
Had higher local rates of infection and death. Hannity relative to Tucker Carlson tonight leads to a greater number of COVID-19 cases and deaths, they write. A 1 standard deviation increase in relative viewership of Hannity relative to Carlson is associated with approximately 30% more COVID-19 cases on March 14th and 21% more COVID-19 deaths on March 28th. It's a working paper. It hasn't been peer-reviewed, hasn't been published in a journal yet, but it is completely predictable. And I think we're going to see more of this. And so when these guys were on there hyping hydroxychloroquine as like it's just motivating people to not take things like social distancing seriously, to not take this entire thing seriously. And now we have the CDC that is basically telling us when we get to the fall, because here's the thing, again, the virus is not going away. It's very possible that we have a much higher percentage of the population that has had it than we know, because we know that there are cases that are asymptomatic. There's data coming out of some of these like prisons where everybody has it, apparently. In Ohio, where a huge number of people were asymptomatic, had it asymptomatic. Hard to know, but it's conceivable. It's one hypothetical that at least is plausible, that many of us have already had it. And, particularly coming out of a place like New York.
Yeah.
And we just don't know it because there's no testing for antibodies yet. But
I think Matt was saying in the prep that, South Korea, where they have great testing and an incredible health service and they basically are testing, I don't know if everybody, but they are testing a lot.
Testing asymptomatic.
They're testing. Yeah. And so I think it's, what was it? It was a 29 or 30%. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but yeah, massive difference. Yeah.
Than what it was in Italy, where they're just testing people who have it, who are showing symptoms.
Who are showing symptoms, yeah.
And so it's conceivable this is the case. But regardless, even if not, they suspect that maybe 1% of the population right now in America has got it. But even if they're wrong, and it's, let's say, 15% or 20%, the fact of the matter is the virus is still there. It is just as contagious. It is just as lethal. When we get to the fall, we're going to have our annual flu epidemic. Now, people hopefully will be able to get flu shots. I imagine there will be an attempt to get more flu shots, but it's unclear to me that they'll be able to produce more. I hope they're starting to do that now, but it's also difficult to predict maybe this far out which strain of flu vaccine is the best one for them. It's going to could be theoretically harder to get flu shots because people might be less inclined to go into their pharmacy full of people to get a flu shot, or their doctor, or wherever. But even if we presume the same amount of flu vaccination that people generally get in the fall, the fact is, we've heard this ad nauseum, 25 to 60,000 people a year die of the flu.
Right.
Now, it's somewhat predictable, but which is good because then we know, but the problem that we're going to have is if we are out in the open, and this year, apparently the number of flu deaths was lower because for a month or two in March, people were staying at home and there was less traveling of the flu virus, the regular flu virus. But if we are out and about, we're not only going to have the flu virus, on top of it, we're going to have coronavirus, which means that our hospitals are going to be even more jammed than they were those weeks in March, where we nearly tipped the scales. So that's why the CDC is warning against what we're seeing in these southern states and whatnot now. Here is Bill Barr, and this is all part of the plan. We want the states to basically, and when they said something, open up, it doesn't open up. We know that a lot of people are not going to go out and go to these shops. What they're really trying to do is they're trying to lessen their unemployment burden. They're trying to make it like their numbers are different. We saw this, in Florida when there was no coronavirus. We're going to make it hard for people to sign up for unemployment, and therefore we have less unemployed. That's the way it works.
Yep.
Just because our numbers don't reflect that. And that's what I think a lot of this is trying to do. They are trying to basically hide the reality of what's going on. And here's Bill Barr now adding this pressure by telling Hugh Hewitt that if governors try and play it too safe for their citizens, we're going to join legal actions to try and reverse it. Here it is.
In their states.
Yeah, but theoretically, we also have 42 U.S.C. 1983, and it has occurred to me that if someone gets out of control, the best answer is not screaming at your television. It may be to litigate against individuals who are abusing your rights, and that is a long-standing tradition in the United States. It happens.
pause it for 1 second. Go back just a little bit. Go back a couple of those, because I want people to hear, Bill Barr talk about states' rights and blah, blah, blah. And then you go, well, yes, except for when we don't like states' rights. And therefore, there's some tort actions that we can take. Go ahead.
To use your analogy at the state level, will citizens be able to use either the Fifth Amendment's prohibition on condemnation without compensation, or 42 U.S.C. 1983 to bring actions against the governments that were obviously indifferent to that blunt instrument's time to be put away?
Again, that's such a general hypothetical, bereft of any facts or, what exactly the consequences and the actions of the government are. That I really can't answer that. But, one of the reasons we have federalism is because the people provide a much greater check over their governors and the state officials than they do over a more remote federal government. And the first line of defense for people is the political process in their states.
Yeah, but theoretically, we also have 42 U.S.C. 1983, and it has occurred to me that if someone gets out of control, the best answer is not screaming at your television. It may be to litigate against individuals who are abusing your rights, and that is a long-standing tradition in the United States. It happens.
Well, if people bring those lawsuits, we'll take a look at it at that time, and if we think it's justified, we would take a position. That's what we're doing now. We're looking carefully at a number of these rules that are being put into place, and if we think one goes too far, we initially try to jawbone the governors into rolling them back or adjusting them, and if they're not, and people bring lawsuits, we file statement of interest and side with the plaintiffs. And at this stage, and we're at a sort of a sensitive stage where we're really transitioning to starting a process of trying to get the nation back up and running, I think that's the best approach. As lawsuits develop, as specific cases emerge in the states, we'll take a look at them.
All right. And so there you have it. I mean, Bill Barr is basically saying, hey, give us a little time, but we're going to hit a point where we're going to welcome these lawsuits and we're going to come in and we're going to support you against these states that are trying to be too for their citizenry. This is it. I mean, they are basically saying, we're going to rev this stuff back up. And, it's just Granny. It's just Granny.
It goes back to the Lieutenant Governor of Texas, what he said about a month ago. He was just a little bit before schedule about basically, grandparents sacrificing themselves so the economy can move. I also just want to say, I think it's really important to look at how these reopened protests are playing out. And I'll keep saying the caveat that I think there is a chunk of, obviously, they should not be outside protesting, but I do think there is if you don't provide people an actual social safety net, there are going to be some people that are going to be drawn to these protests during this time. And I think we need to be very thoughtful about how we talk about them. And that's a very important thing in my view. But then there's also, the AstroTurf element. And I just think that, just look at how this works. You have, we know the DeVos family in Michigan was backing those protests. Then we have Bill Barr come out on UU and signal what's about to come. And Trump is tweeting about it. So if you go out in the street for a right-wing protest, you get an immediate sugar rush. Look at what I'm doing immediately gets a response from the most powerful sectors of society. And there's a reason why they're being facilitated to protest right now, because this is going to come. This is definitely going to happen. I also want to say, and I'm still obsessed with this and concerned about this, but Bill Barr talking about people being in house arrest-like conditions. Please, let's not forget that this is a guy who requested several weeks ago, that in times of emergency, that essentially we should scrap habeas corpus. I mean, that's really what he's saying. Allow people to be in jail for indefinite detention if judges can't get to them. Now, of course, instead of letting go of nonviolent offenders, protecting public health, not subjecting people in prisons to these horrible conditions, there's the human rights issue. Then there's also the broader, political and civil liberties issues at stake. So, I mean, but please just let's always remember that when Bill Barr has anything to say about,
of course, it's absurd. It's absurd. Here is Brian Kemp, again, part of this coalition of southern states. You might almost call them a confederacy.
We got a little organization that we're working on. It's very Coen Brothers movie.
Talking about his plan to open up. Now, the federal government has released some standards as to guidelines as to when to open up. Georgia doesn't come close to meeting any of these in terms of like percentage of testing, in terms of infection rates, none of it. But the bottom line is he wants to kick people off unemployment before he even has to put them on the rolls. And the way you do that is you just say, like, here's an impossible task for you. Come in and work in an incredibly dangerous situation. Oh, you won't? Well, then you're not unemployed. You're just deciding to stay home. Here's Brian Kemp.
Screening. So let's say that the gym decides that they're going to test everybody's temperature when they walk in. But as we all know, there are asymptomatic people who are contagious to every person that they come in contact with potentially. So once you've got a fever, it's already too late. You've already, been 5 days of being someone who can spread that disease. So how are you going to screen these people who want to go to these businesses?
The same could be happening at the grocery store and other places. That's why the fitness owners, I have great confidence in them spreading people out when they're doing a workout, doing this additional sanitation that we've all been, learned how to do now, and taking those precautions.
Spreading people out.
He's justifying why you can open up gyms because it's just like the grocery store. You spread people out, right? We all know that they don't cram in all the exercise machines next to each other. And it's not like, just like at the grocery store, when you go to the grocery store where you have the people next to you huffing and puffing and sweating and shedding literally all of their body fluids upon you. Go ahead.
With hand sanitation and having the folks working in the facilities wearing masks and other things. And we'll be putting those guidelines out. And listen, if people don't want to go, Martha, they don't have to. If people don't want to open the gym, they don't have to. But when you close somebody's business down and take the livelihood of that individual and those employees, and they are literally at the face of losing everything, I'm willing to give them the
I'm willing to risk other people's lives for that. That's what I'm willing to do. Look, it's just like the supermarket. It's just, in this instance, they're sweating and breathing and spitting.
Just to underline how ridiculous that is, we are so ill-equipped for this response that in some places that are much less developed in the United States, like Kerala in India or Vietnam, they have actually coordinated responses to try to reduce people going to markets. That's actually something that has been accounted for in smart places. Delivering meals to people who need it, thinking about how to solve problems, because we actually already know. One of the horrible, despicable, depressing stories that we see every day are, cashiers are dying from exchanging cash with people for an essential service. And I do look, that would be fantastic. Let's all just go back to the gym, throw a little Clorox, spray it in the air, and get to it.
So here's Brian Kemp, one more time, governor of Georgia, desperate to not pay unemployment to people who are out of work. He's on with Martha MacCallum again. And here is his justification for opening close contact businesses. One getting a tattoo, getting a pedicure, getting a manicure, getting a haircut, whatnot.
How would that work? You're like,
well,
I don't even know. What?
Here he is. He's going to say it again. It's unbelievable. This guy's got a line. He's going to stick to it.
So, for instance, is it in Atlanta? If someone wants to get their nails done or their hair done on Friday, or tattoo or go to a gym, these are very close contact kinds of businesses that are the first ones on your list. Can you explain why you would start with those kinds of businesses on day one?
Well, those are the ones who are closed. The other businesses in Georgia are still currently opening under the order that I have now, and we're coming down. I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. But you also have to give that fitness owner or that owner in a hair salon the ability to be able to be a partner in this fight that we're in. They're going to have to follow the strict guidelines. I would tell you that I imagine there'll be people in gyms that'll be a lot safer than they would be going to the grocery store or some of the other places of business that are part of the critical infrastructure that's been designated at the federal level. This is going to take some common sense. Our people in our state have learned a lot through this. They have helped us be a solution to the problem, to flatten the curve and to start getting on the other side of this.
I just wanted to be fair, Sam, I just want to say I have stopped doing squats at the bodega.
That's right. That's
that it really has shifted my whole attitude towards, doing planks as an example when I'm buying milk. I don't do that anymore. It's part of a broader effort.
I no longer sweat on the produce.
Yeah.
It used to be one of those things where I'd just be like, and then I just rub all the produce. And now I don't do that anymore. I just don't do it. I like
because you're thinking about the bigger struggle we're in.
I like this concept of like, we're going to get in the fight. We're going to fight this virus. You come over here, you want to take me on, virus, I'll kick your ass. Like, it's this attitude of like, I don't know. It's just as if like, I mean.
Bringing in the pyrotechnic guys to help fight the fire.
Yeah, it's just this attitude of like, but it's just this attitude of like, I don't,
admitting you have an immune system makes you a pussy.
Yeah, it's just, but it's also just sort of like even like just admitting that there are things in nature that I don't like. I can't believe this appeals to people. It is.
There were predictions in the beginning that this was like going to facilitate a return to facts or whatever. And look, I don't know if that's the best framing to look at politics to begin with, frankly, but inside that type of politics, no, it won't, because it is between the fact that there's literal political priorities for the donor class.
Right.
Got to get people out to work and kill them because we got money to make. And this other like deep fanatical beliefs about how we can control our external environment. I mean, it's, and you see stories like this regularly.
Well, I will say this.
People are dying.
Brian Kemp obviously is doing it because he wants to cut the expenses of his state. And this is one of the ways he's doing it. He's willing to do that without even hesitation to do it on the backs of working people.
Right.
He doesn't care. He doesn't care. And he's throwing this attitude of like the fight, the rhetoric is to get the dupes who are like, that's right, we're going to show COVID-19 who's boss. This is America. You can't come in here and, give us a virus. And that, I think, is going to appeal. I mean, it appeals to a lot of those people. I do think that there will be some people who, and cue up clip number 12, Brendan, there will be some people, some percentage, maybe it's 5%, 10% of people who will be like, I mean, I've been thinking about like, how is this going to impact my 14-year-old daughter in terms of the way that she perceives, like my 7-year-old son, I think it's really going to hurt him socially.
Yeah.
Because he's afraid of people now because he thinks he's going to get it. My 14-year-old daughter, she's not afraid of people. She realizes this is something like, this is a different situation, but I think she's also like going to learn that we are connected in a way that maybe is more visceral than people have understood in the past. And
I think some people, I think some people definitely have a much greater sense of interdependence out of this, for sure.
And then I think there's some people like this 21-year-old woman from Nashville, Tennessee. This is a news report that's coming from Fox 17 in Nashville.
Oh, this is sad.
Yep.
Seen the spring breakers who act as if they are immune to the coronavirus. Some believe it's only going to impact older Americans. Well, guess what? You know it. They are wrong. Fox 17 News' Harriet Wallace is sharing a warning to those young people from a young person.
Yeah, this is Ireland Tate. She's 21 years old, and like many folks her age, she made a joke about the coronavirus, said she and her friends still going out publicly and privately. It was a joke until she got the virus herself. Ireland Tate is young, full of life, unbothered, and unafraid of the coronavirus pandemic.
So I'm aware that we're supposed to be like self-quarantining and like social distancing and like all these things to like keep everyone safe. I get it. Cool. Great.
The 21-year-old is a picture of perfect health.
I just don't think that I'm going to get the virus.
Until now.
Feels like there's someone sitting on my chest at all times. It's really hard to breathe. I've coughed until my throat has bled.
There are still those who believe that the virus only affects those who are elderly.
And I mean, you know, hopefully that's as bad as it gets for her in terms of her health. But
Jesus, that's
I mean,
so
at one
sad.
point, you know, and I still, it's possible. Maybe 30%, 40%, 15, 20% of the population in this country has already got it. It was asymptomatic. They didn't even know I had it. And we are closer to some type of herd immunity than we realize. And maybe, you know, we'll have a couple of these sort of blips and then it'll be over. And that would be great. That would be great. But it's also possible that that's not the story, and that the story will be that we're going to go through waves of crises like these. And when we get into a situation where hospitals are already at capacity because of the actual flu, that we have even something more of a disaster. We don't know. And I certainly hope it's the former and not the latter. But it's quite possible there's a lot of people who are about to get, you know, schooled in a way that is going to be really unfortunate for everybody. For everybody. Here is here's Fox Hannity. We've talked about who, you know, the studies show if you watch Hannity as opposed to Carlson, may lead to more coronavirus deaths. Here he is sharing a bunch of headlines from March saying that COVID-19 is Trump's biggest disaster. And he's just convinced. Remember, we're supposed to 60,000, right, was the model that the administration was using. We're already close to 50,000 as of probably today. Maybe it's like around 46. We're losing about 2,000 people a day. And we're about to go into a situation where in a couple of these states, they're going to take off they're going to basically say, go out, party. Here's Sean Hannity. This is clip number 7.
They will even politicize a virus because they so hate Donald Trump. That's how sick they are. But meanwhile, we have their timeline. March 8th, fake news, CNN, it's Trump's Katrina. Yeah, in the middle of Trump getting the supplies together. March 9th, Washington Post. This is Eric Pimple's paper, calling it Donald Trump's Chernobyl. March 12th, when President Trump extended a travel ban to Europe, the mob slammed him for infecting international relations. March 13th, when the president declared a national emergency, Time magazine called it an admission of failure. March 19th, fake news, CNN, claiming Trump's lack of imagination was costing American lives and treasure. March 30th, well, the Boston Globe, not to be undone by anyone else in the mob, accusing the president of having blood on his hands. April 8th, the psychos over at MSDNC that live in that whole altered universe of theirs, well, they had one of their paid commentators and hosts saying that tens of thousands of people will die because of Trump's coronavirus incompetence. April 11th, New York Times, very same paper, encouraging Americans to travel to China after the travel ban. Dumb that they are. They wrote that Trump should have seen the virus coming. He did the ban 10 days after the first case.
Sean Hannity is really not good at TV.
No, he's not good at radio either, frankly.
Like, what is going? I think Alec Baldwin made this observation that, like, with Bill O'Reilly, you get it. Like, he's a blowhard, an asshole, whatever, but he's obviously has huge broadcasting talent. But Sean Hannity is like some angry Long Island dad who won a contest. They were just like, Hannity, all right, you have a Fox News show now.
He did win a contest. And
really?
I can explain it in 3 words. Limbaugh lead-in.
How did he get that, though?
Well, because he ain't no Limbaugh. There was nobody else in the business.
There's no one else in the business.
And he was put on after Rush Limbaugh on all these stations across the country And he basically
There you go.
kept 75% of Limbaugh's audience, which was huge. And that was it. And he was the guy there. And then Roger Ailes said, I need an idiot and another idiot to do Hannity and Combs. And he found them.
I heard a really funny story that supposedly, you know how Sean Hannity was, he throw a football. I don't know if he still does it, but he used to throw a football at the end of the show. And in the beginning, it was a tennis ball. And Sean was into tennis. And Roger Ailes was like, what the fuck is that? That's not manly.
Yeah, exactly.
And made him change. In a very manly act, Sean Hannity had to change which ball he throw.
Yeah, throw the Nerf football to show like, look at me. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Here is Brian Kilmeade and Ainsley Earhart on Fox and Friends. They don't mind. They have no problem with an immigration ban. Unless it's someone really dear to them. And they have an interesting idea of what middle-class families can afford, too, incidentally. Here is Kilmeade and Ainsley Earhart.
President came out when the president came out yesterday and said, okay, I said I'll pause for 60 days, but he also added for ag workers, for families, and even you mentioned yesterday the au pair, Ainsley, for middle class families, they're going to be allowed to come because they allow people like you to be able to work and do a job that gets you up at 3 a.m. So that's going to, he's showing he's not tone deaf to there are certain industries that need those legal work visas to come here. So that's important. President
Ainsley Earhart is middle class. And so basically, rich people can have their au pairs. How much money do you think Ainsley Earhart makes? Can somebody look that up?
I mean,
I
don't know, but
the
obviously
median income
millions,
for a family of 4 in this country is something like $48,000.
Yeah, so she probably makes about $75,000. You know, solid middle class income.
Approximately $400,000 is what wealthypersons.com tells me.
I imagine it's at least that. I bet you it's more than that too. But she's got a friend who has a chicken salad business. Wait, do we have a part 2, Brendan?
That was for Brian Kemp.
Oh, okay.
You know what I love is that I like that because he could not be tone deaf with Fox News because he literally watches Fox News all day. I'm sure if somebody's just like, well, we got to take care of the au pairs. I saw that. Ainsley was saying that in the morning.
Yeah. If you're really rich, you get to have an immigrant. But if not, as long as somebody owns the immigrant, then it's okay.
What's this going to mean for models coming over, though?
Exactly. We have to have tight borders, but there's also people who, Jeffrey Epstein really opened up the market, and we don't want to disrupt the flow.
Let's check in on Daily Wire's Michael Knowles. This guy is a font of.
Speaking of great broadcasting talent,
effing dumb. Jesus. You know what's amazing? It's just how stupid these guys are. Like, you don't have to be a genius. You just have to read like 3 or 4 things to get a sense of like, what does it mean to have a pandemic? Effing idiots. Here's Michael Knowles, the Daily Wire, claiming that we don't need to have people forced to stay at home to save lives. Magic exists.
You ever Michael Knowles' acting reel?
Yes.
Yeah, that's relevant to this too. He
sweet.
tells on himself because he's talking about LA, which is a nice little flourish here. Sorry for everyone in the chat.
Same way I remember Ben Shapiro's sitcom that never got off the ground.
Yeah, we don't, as a country, we don't know what we missed with that.
Yeah, politically correct.
Close out that McConnell hits thing that is screwing up your browser.
It must be
I like this. This is real-time production. Everybody should learn to take things a little bit more slow. It's going to be one of the lessons we need to take out of this this pandemic.
Just play it out of the Slack, but it's.
Oh, you got it. You got it. You got it.
Less than half of adults in Los Angeles right now are currently employed. Now, you might just say that's LA, because it's a city full of actors and writers, and they're not the most employed people ever. Well, that's not quite right. You know, they're not employed in the careers that they pretend that they're doing, but they often are employed. You know, they're waiting tables, they're Uber drivers, they're assistants, they're doing jobs in LA, and now half of them are not, because this town is.
I just, who is he talking to? Why isn't he not looking? Is he talking to us? Why is he looking off? Why is the camera over there? I don't get this style of shooting. It seems like maybe his camera person's unemployed too. Go ahead.
Shut down. Film production is shut down, okay? That's a lot of people in one of the major American cities. Specifically, over 1.3 million LA residents who were employed just a few weeks ago are no longer employed. That destroys lives, okay? Especially when it lasts for a long time. It's not just the money. It's not just even the work. It's not even just the self-esteem. Higher unemployment numbers mean higher death numbers. When I'm saying we're comparing the effects of the shutdown, what if we had the shutdown, what if we don't have the shutdown, we can get right down to brass tacks, the number of people who will die. Because increasingly it is appearing that the lockdown.
First off, it is true that unemployment is associated with higher mortality rates. But we don't know if that's because people who are unemployed start to feel discouraged. Maybe they drink more. Maybe they get more involved in drugs. Maybe they look around and they see other people getting careers and being discouraged. We really don't know what the impact of unemployment because of a pandemic where everybody is in the same boat, staying at home, where you don't look out and go like, look at all those people having fun out there. We don't know. We really don't know. But let's let him continue.
What if we had the shutdown? What if we don't have the shutdown? We can get right down to brass tacks, the number of people who will die. Because increasingly it is appearing that the lockdowns are not saving any lives. Because with or without the lockdowns, people who are frail and older can just stay home. They don't have to go out.
So wait a second. So if you're frail and older, you don't have to go out. You have to have no contact with people. Presumably that's also maybe could be associated with higher death rates too, just like unemployment. But the idea that the lockdowns are not saving any lives is just, I mean, it's laughable. It's insanity. It's total insanity.
Even just historically, reading about other, pandemics, in some ways it's terrifying how little has changed, but it's like, what did people do? They stayed inside. Yeah. They distanced from each other. This is just what you do. This is how you don't have the hospital system in New York completely collapse on itself. Also, I mean, whatever, it's a broken record. But it always has to be said that this is the most solvable problem in the world. Give everybody $2,000 a month, suspend rent, take care of other basic necessities, and everybody can have food and shelter and wait it out. And I have no doubt that most people would be extremely emotionally satisfied to play their part in combating this, not risk their lives themselves, and eat and take care of their families. This is really not that complicated.
I want to read a clip from Joe Wiesenthal's email thing. He is the, I think he's the editor at Bloomberg Business. Mm-hmm. Something people should understand about this current U.S. economic crisis that is in large part a policy choice.
Right.
People joining food lines all around the country is the result of a policy choice, not to supply laid off workers with more income or easy enough access to income from the government. The spiraling number of small business closing up shop is the result of a policy choice to cap the level of payroll support, turning the program into a de facto lottery. In other words, There's 30 million small businesses out there, and about 1 to 2 million got relief in the last version of the relief bill. The wave of state and local austerity we're already seeing, Los Angeles is the latest, they're talking about major budget cuts, same with New York, is due to a policy choice not to include ample money for municipal funding in any of the emergency spending bills that we've seen so far. Of course, the social distancing demands create an exceptionally difficult and disruptive situation for everyone. But the attendant level of economic devastation that this has caused was a choice. The federal government isn't anywhere close to exhausting its fiscal capabilities to supply the private, state, and local sectors with replacement income for the duration of the public health emergency. The reasons behind these choices are different and complex. However, the economist J.W. Mason nailed it in one aspect in a blog post, writing, "It seems like one of the deepest lessons of the crisis is that a system organized around the threat of withholding people's subsistence will deeply resist measures to guarantee it, even when particular circumstances make that necessary for the survival of the system of itself." Show people that there is another way of organizing society, even if it means the success of the society as it stands now. And the bottom line is, it's funny, like when this was, right at the end of the primary, I would go on MSNBC quite a bit. And this stuff was starting to happen in Italy. And I remember talking to Chris Hayes during a break at one point, and we were both like, this could be worse here. We don't have the social cohesion to get people to actually take the measures you need to stay inside for an extended period of time. And more importantly, we don't have the social infrastructure that exists in place to deal with the fallout of this stuff, i.e., we don't have health insurance for people. We have to reinvent the wheel in this instance, or just not drive anywhere.
Well, that's what we say, is that America's a third world country with a Gucci belt. And also, in addition to that, and again, I think this actually does speak to the Democratic leadership. And, we've been saying this again from the very beginning. The demented, it is not the same as what Trump and the Republicans and the governors are putting forward. However, the demented obsession with means testing, the rejection of programs like Medicare for All, even in this context, proves that these commitments are ideological. They're not just what they think is tactically safe, in my view. And that broader concern cuts along certainly party lines, that if we show Americans that there is a baseline of decency and security that could be provided for instantaneously, that would have major implications for labor organizing, for what people expected from the corporate sector more generally. And they don't want to do that.
Without a doubt. When I was a junior in college, John Benjamin and I and another friend, Charlie, went and did that backpack through Europe thing. And at one point we went into East Germany, because you could go like on a day tour or something.
Wow.
And I remember going to an East German, I think it was museum, and going to the bathroom and using the toilet paper there. And I became convinced that to end the Cold War, the U.S., all they needed to do was to fly a C-130 transport plane and dump, some type of like nice toilet paper on East Germany, just like, Charmin or whatever it was. And within weeks, the wall would come down because people are like, we want that stuff. We want the nice toilet paper now that we know that it exists.
Right.
And I think that's
we want that nice social democracy.
There's no way in a million years, the way our government is structured right now, that if the Democrats came out and said, instead of expanding COBRA, let's expand Medicaid, that we would get it. But they don't want to do it. And this is building on your point. They don't want to put that out there, because when the crisis ends, everybody's going to be like, well, wait a second. If it was a good idea then, why is it not a good idea now?
Exactly.
And they don't
as simple
want
as that.
to give people the idea that this is doable, and they're risking all of it to avoid getting to that point. And it's
100%. And that's why it is strategically incoherent, because when you get to the recommendations, again, of even people like Stanley Greenberg, the Democratic pollster I've been reading and mentioning, he's not not necessarily talking about Medicare for all, but he is talking about seriously beefing up government programs, and they don't want to do that. I mean, just what we've been saying. I want to also recommend for people who are in quarantine and have the ability to do this. It reminded me of Comrade Detective. That's a very funny show. You familiar with that show?
No.
It's basically they do it as if they've discovered it in some archive somewhere. It's a new show, but the idea is that it's a found show, I think, from Romania in the 80s. And it's like a buddy cop adventure show, except they're two like earnest Soviet communist detectives. And somebody is sneaking in Reagan masks and blue jeans. And they've got to figure out what's going on. It's actually a really fun show.
Let's take a little flashback, shall we, for a moment? Just peek in one of the stupidest commentators that have an opportunity to express themselves.
Please.
I'm curious. I'm curious as to what Matt Walsh is up to these days. We're now all on our house, like he is, talking out of our asses, like he does. Here he was. Now, this is, to be fair, this was almost 4 weeks ago. 4 whole weeks ago, when he was saying something really stupid that now in retrospect looks just as stupid. And look at that.
Every year,
before I even had a beard that looks like his.
That we allow people to drive their cars, 30 to 35,000 people will die. And across the world, it would be 1 million people or thereabouts. And there will be tens of thousands more, if not hundreds of thousands more, I don't know, who are seriously injured, maimed, or crippled in car accidents. We know that is the cost of having our cars. And yet, nobody says, let's get rid of cars. And so the calculation we have made, the bargain we have made, the deal we've made is those 35,000 dead are a price worth paying so that we can drive. We don't want to put it that way. We don't want to think of it that way. We're not saying that it would be worth it to actively kill 35,000 people to like appease the gods or something so that we can drive. That's not the point. Okay. We're not saying that we should go out and kill 35,000 people ourselves in order to drive. What we're saying is if people drive, 35,000 people or thereabouts will die. We don't want them to, but they will. And although we're very sad about that, we will accept that side effect. And then we bring that over to the COVID-19 discussion and we say, okay, in order to preserve our economy, we know what we're willing to accept in order to preserve our ability to drive. What are we willing to accept in terms of a death toll in order to preserve our economy and our way of life and our livelihoods? Our cars, along with our homes and our retirement savings and the food in our fridge and everything else. What are we willing to accept there in terms of risk, in terms of potential death toll? It's got to be way over 35,000. So what is it? I don't know. I'm just saying that's the point. That's the ethical question that we're dealing with.
I'm just asking questions.
I'm just asking questions. Now, of course, this dum-dum at the time didn't sort of calculate the idea that like, well, I'm giving you all these numbers that we can predict what they are. Now, he clearly couldn't predict what the number of deaths we were going to have with coronavirus because we're already 10,000 over where he said we would be or what would be the actual thing. And had he had any inclination that it was going to be over that number 3 weeks after he made that stupid video, he wouldn't have chosen that number. But what he also doesn't realize, I mean, and that's a number, let's say, remind people, after we had